about training? What kind of things would you do looking at training? What would you be thinking about? Well, rules of the road would be one step, wouldn't it? So if you think about this, we already talked about the speed limits. It's not exactly what it is posted. So we want them to kind of be thinking that process. What's the road conditions? How fast should I be going? The other day when I went over McDonald Pass, I talked about it was snow-packed and icy. Wasn't too bad over there, but when I hit 141, which is between Avon and I think it's Helmville or something like that, that distance in there, boy, let me tell you, there was a couple places in that road that doing even 45 was a little too fast for road conditions coming down off of a hill or something. So you have to adjust your speed. You want them to understand and pay attention to that kind of thing. How about passing? Anybody understand the 3-second rule? I just found out about this, as a matter of fact. Guy was traveling, he said he pulled onto the interstate on I-90 at Manhattan, going to Bozeman. He said he pulled out, passed the cop came in behind him. You know, the cop was coming in off of a stop. She pulled in behind him. So he was going down the road, and he got up behind a semi, turned on his blinker, cleared it, knew he had a clear path, pulled over in the lane, went around the semi, the cop car came up behind, a highway patrol came in behind him. Next thing you know, he passed another cop car, that car pulled in behind the other one. He said, this isn't having a good feel to this. He said, I really wasn't having a good feeling about this, but he said, they did pull me over. And when she came up to the car, she said, here's why I pulled you over. I pulled you over because you didn't give 3 seconds from the time you hit your turn signal to the time you changed lanes. And he's like, 3 seconds? Yep, you're supposed to give 3 seconds so that lets people behind you adjust for what you're going to do. And he was like, okay. The real reason they stopped him is that's a drug alley in there, or pathway that they figure. So they're looking for reasons to pull people over. So they pulled him over, and then the next question was, do you have any, she said the highway patrolman behind me has a drug-sniffing dog. Is there anything that we would be concerned about in your vehicle? And he started laughing, and she said, that's the response we're looking for, and they didn't go any further. But if he sat there and went, no, I don't want your dogs around here, that's the car we're going to look at. So they were looking at him for a particular reason, okay? But again, keep in mind, there are different things that we need to talk about. How about the right-of-way? Is it a crime to give the right-of-way to someone else, especially if they want to take it? It's not a right. And there's nothing wrong if somebody wants the right-of-way, give them the right-of-way. You're just going to end up in an accident if not. So I think it's worthy of discussions, these different types of things that we have put up here, turning the lane changes, passengers in your vehicle, intersections being uncontrolled, school zones, overtaking other vehicles. I think these are the things that we talk about all the time. So these are kind of things to kind of look at when you're looking at training. You want to go through there, and one of the best things you can do is use this little planning tool that you have and have them honestly fill that out. This gives you an idea of where you're at with things, because to be honest, this really sets the tone for things. This will, help you out in this process of what do we need to talk about. Part of that training also needs to include distances. There's the perception distance. That's the distance from the time that your eye registers that there's a problem, that goes back to the brain, right? And there's also that distance that your brain tells your foot to step on the brake. And then there's also that braking distance from the time that your foot actually starts applying pressure to the brake, and it actually now gets transmitted to the tire on the road. So what does that distance look like? And I think that that's important to understand. And so when you kind of put something like this up here for people to understand, because I don't think we really realize how many feet we go without stopping. And so it's kind of a concern. So if even at 25 miles an hour, by the time you realize you need to stop, that could be 27 feet. By the time your brain tells your foot to step on the brake and you actually start to apply, and then it could be another 34 feet, over 34 feet, by the time you actually come to a stop, by the time you apply the brakes. So if you look at it, that total distance is 61 feet, 0.7. Isn't that a lot? What's our speed limit through residential areas? Generally about 25 miles an hour. So when you go through there, generally when I'm going through a residential area, I'm looking for kids, because that's going to tell me what, maybe I need to slow down. Because at 25, I'm not going to have enough time to stop in a residential area. But if I see a lot of kids playing and a lot of balls being, those kids are not looking out for you. So this really sets the tone for, how many seconds is that? That's 1.7 seconds. So you can kind of think about the distance that you're covering in that process. How about 65 miles an hour? Not 75, 65. It takes you 71 feet to realize that you need to apply the brakes. It takes you another 234, almost 235 feet to actually come to the stop, which gives you a whole total distance of 305. That's a football field. That chews up about 3.2 seconds. Now, think of this. How fast you're going on the interstate, what's the distance in front of you to the car that's in front of you? How many people do you see doing 75 and they barely have a car length between them? And I know they have in their mind, if he stops, I'll hit the brakes soon enough. No, you're not. Your chances of doing that are slim to none. So I think it's also something to focus in on with folks, exactly where they're at, how much stopping time they got. So talk to your folks about distances. How much distance do you have between you and the vehicle in front of you? So you should, in most cases, if you're driving just a regular vehicle, you should have the 3-second rule, right? And how do you do that? You see the vehicle in front of you pass an object, and you go 1001, 1002, 1003 before you hit that object, or pass that object, not hit it, pass it. Yeah, come up to, whatever the word is, don't hit it. All right. But that's a thought pattern, is to make sure. Now, I was trained a little bit differently, which was for every 10 miles, you should have a car length between you and the car in front of you. So if you're doing 75 miles an hour, you should have 7.5 car lengths between you and the car in front of you. Different ways of looking at this. If you're on really bad road conditions, maybe it's a 6-second rule. If you're driving a heavy truck, 6-second rule. Again, making sure that you have enough time distance between what you have in front of you to stop. We've often asked truck drivers, so what's your ability to stop faster? A truck that you have no trailer on the back of, or it's empty, or a vehicle or a tractor that has a full load in the back? Which is going to stop faster? Say again? No. Full. Because you have more weight on the back brakes on your tractor than you do if it's empty back there. Because if it's empty, you don't have enough weight to get any traction on the road. See, there's little things out there that they need to be aware of, and it does take some research to kind of come up with some of this information. But these are the things that you want to focus in on when it comes to training. Exactly what are we looking at here? But reminding people, making them aware of those issues. This is where it really comes into play when we talk about awareness, because when we talk about awareness, this is the part where we're trying to get the employees to buy into what we're trying to sell them. We want them to follow our expectations. How successful are you going to be at getting people to follow your expectations when they're your expectations and not theirs? Don't they have to be their expectations? So that's where this awareness part comes in. You can give them all the knowledge in the world, but their values, their attitudes are what's going to dictate their behavior, is it not? I think this is really where it comes into play, that we really have to consider these things when we're looking at, so how can we get people to kind of focus in on some of these things? So having an open dialogue with your folks, talking to them about this. What are their expectations? What are your expectations? Getting them to buy into your expectations, make those expectations their own. By having them sign a cell phone thing, I will not use a cell phone. You get them to openly admit, hey, I'm committed. I'm saying in front of everyone that I won't use a cell phone and drive. There are things that you can do, okay? Now, obviously, we've talked about distracted driving, and we've talked about the road rage. We've talked about using that risk tool and planning tool that you can kind of go through there. How about road rage being part of that thought process as far as what our expectations of people are? You know, there's something about behind the wheel of the car and being surrounded by people that are taking chances. So the question I have in here for everyone is that, have you ever pulled a boneheaded play? Cut in front of someone that you didn't mean to cut in front of? You did something that you wouldn't do, but you know, you felt bad about it. Did you really need someone pulling up alongside of the vehicle and giving you the middle finger to just kind of remind you of what you just did? Yeah. The thing is that you want people to understand that, look, we're all going to be in this situation at some point, time or another, when we will pull a boneheaded play. And we don't need to take it out on the other person. We just need to understand that that happens from time to time and let it go. Okay? Speeding, seatbelts, we talked about that. Other issues that you want to talk about? How about managing the space around your vehicle? What other things do you have happen around your vehicle that you should be concerned about a lot of the time? Okay, so let me give you a scenario. You got a car up in front of you, and that car is like all over, you know, that you can hear them, you can see them where they're going over the into the park lane over here. You can see where they're passing the center line, kind of getting back in. They're kind of seeing all over. So what's your first thing that you want to do? What is the indication? And I'm not talking about call the cops and let them know he's out there. Well, you want to stay away from him, but how do most people want to do that? Yeah, you want to pass him and get in front of him. You want to get as far away from him as possible. Here's the key, though. What's your reaction time to something that's happening behind you versus what's in front of you? How many people when they're driving are really focused in on what's going behind you? Do you? Because I'm not very, I mean I do. I look behind me to see what's going on. But generally my focus is going forward. I think of that movie Cannonball with Burt Reynolds and all of his fun group that he always put together for those movies. And there was the Italian guy that grabbed the rearview mirror, pulled it off and threw it in the back seat, and he says, "What's behind me does not matter. Only what's in front of me," right? And I think that that's how a lot of people focus, because they don't worry what's behind them, but your reaction time, and you can only do so many things when you got somebody behind you that's doing something. When you see that person that's not following the rules, that are going a little too fast, or maybe they're all over the road, you said it best, slow down. If nothing else, pull off to the side of the road and give them some miles, give them some distance in between you and them. You don't want to contest with them trying to get around them, and then once they're behind you, you're in almost worse shape than you were in the first place by keeping them in front of you. So keep in mind what that space around your vehicle looks like. How you have your mirrors set up. You know, we all have our side mirrors set up so that you see the length of your car going down. Now this is freaky because I've done this with my vehicles, but if you turn them out just a little bit further, it gives you a little bit more of that space that you won't see. You won't see the side of your car necessarily, which is kind of the freaky part, but it gives you a better indication of what's happening behind you. And then if you want to make a point with your people, have someone get in the vehicle that they're going to be driving in, and then just kind of walk up behind there and have them stop you when they no longer see your feet. Because that's going to give them a clear indication of things that are behind them that they're not going to have a clear view of. Get them to think about what kind of space they have around themselves and how best to manage that space. Okay? Nighttime driving, I love it. However, I do know it comes with risk. When you're driving at night, what happens to your reaction time? It goes down. How about your vision? Goes down. Now, there's less people on the road, but everything goes down. You don't have those opportunities that you normally would during daylight hours. Crested Boulder Hill going into Boulder, and I was in the state rig, and I thought, no cars are coming. I ought to turn on my brights. I turned on my brights. Seconds before, right there's a cow elk. It was like right there. And I didn't swerve, but I did maneuver the car just a hair, and then I missed her. But if I hadn't turned on my brights, we would have had an accident. So nighttime driving, do you want your people driving at night? Some people have no choice. If you're doing deliveries, for instance, they start out at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. You may not avoid that, but make decisions as far as what you want your folks to do, okay? How about communicating their intentions again? Using the turn signals. I hit on that because that is an issue that I see probably more times than not, people not using turn signals, not communicating their intentions about what they plan on doing. Either that or they leave their turn signal on for long periods of time and now you have no clue as to what they're going to do, right? I think the one thing you want to get across to your folks, always have a plan. Always be looking for hazards. Always be looking for other people and what they're doing, the road conditions, always scanning, always thinking, if this happens, if this happens, if this happens, I'm going to do this, or I could do that, or I may do this. Their reaction is going to be much better if they've thought through what action they want to take versus they don't know. I'll deal with it when it happens. Because if you do it that way, chances are you're going to make a bad move. So having people always think about, boy, what am I going to do if this happens? That's the best thing in the world you want them to do. That's what you want them to focus in on. Okay.